Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 2019 horror film In Fabric. Now, this is one weird, fucked up, crazy movie, and on one hand, it doesn't quite live up to its potential, but on another, its aesthetic, its quirkiness, its inherent uniqueness more than makes it worth your while. At least for me personally. I ultimately liked the film, despite some of the flaws that with any other movie, with any other aesthetic, would easily have crippled them. But all the flaws do with this movie is just make it a film that isn't excellent, doesn't make it a classic, but it makes it a good film for what it is, despite the issues that I do have with it. The film was directed by Peter Strickland, and I'm not really that familiar with his work. And after seeing this, I am a fan. I'm looking forward to seeing whatever he does next, because this is a guy who has an eye for color, he has an eye for style, and he just has a vision that I really appreciate. This movie is gorgeous. It's as gorgeous as the red dress that is featured in the center of this movie and quite prominently in the film. And it has this giallo look and feel to it. It reminds me a lot of a prime Dario Argento in works like Suspiria or Inferno. And I love Argento in his prime. It's some of my favorite type of films to look at and marvel at is Argento in his prime. So when you are in that boat, you're in really good company. And so I feel Peter Strickland is definitely in that company, along with his cinematographer, Ari Wegner. So the movie, I will say this, is definitely not for everyone. If the trailer didn't really pique your interest, then I probably wouldn't recommend it. Because in a lot of ways, it is style over substance, which is, interestingly enough, really what fashion is in multiple different ways. It's all about style. It's not really about any substance. There's not really a whole lot of subtext going on in fashion, or with a red dress. And if the kind of concept sounds familiar to you, there's a reason for that. This has kind of been done before. There was a film that came out in the 90s called I'm Dangerous Tonight. It was directed by Tobe Hooper. I believe it was like a cable made for, or made for TV movie, or direct to video film, and it involved a red dress. But really what I think it was like a ceremonial gown or something in like Aztec or Mayan culture. It was used in sacrifices, and there were some magical abilities that the dress blah, blah, I'm turning into Porky Pig before your eyes apparently. But anyway, this is what happens when you record things live. But so yeah, it was a dress that had some magic ability that when someone put it on, it possessed them or something with the spirit of this god or whatever, or so on and so forth. It was rather muddled. It was rather eh. I would probably say I liked this a lot more. It didn't take itself nearly as seriously. Even though this film does play a lot of this stuff straight, that doesn't mean it's taking it seriously. See, you can play something straight and still have a comedic tone, and that is clearly what this film is doing. It's so out there and weird and bizarre with a lot of things that I think a lot of it is just meant to be humorous. A lot of it is just dark humor. And this film has a good amount of that in the movie. And I'm a fan of dark humor when it's well placed and when it's done well. But yeah, this is such a tour de force of cinematography and direction. It just looks amazing. I cannot expound enough on the overall aesthetic of this movie. I absolutely adored it. It looks a lot like a 60s or 70s color film. It also maintains the same aesthetic as the 60s or 70s style fashion catalogs that are featured in the movie quite prominently. So it's one of those things where it's just multiple different levels of aesthetic. I love how he shot the colors, in particular the color red. This is a really talented filmmaker who I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has up his sleeve next. That being said, I do think the script could have used some work, and I do feel that it definitely could have used some more polish. This is a screenplay that is not as good as it could be in a multitude of different ways. First off, the movie feels like two different films that are mashed together, and not mashed together very gently or with care. It's a very haphazard mesh of two different films. So the first half of the movie is easily the strongest, and I really loved until the ending of the first half. I was really getting into it. I thought it was great. Not only was the aesthetic amazing, but I did like the story, and most importantly, I really became engaged with the character, the lead character in this first half, Sheila, played by Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who delivers a excellent performance in this film. And I really started to feel for her plight. She's a divorced bank teller. She's dealing with her deadbeat dirtbag son who uses her house as his own personal whorehouse and is just treating her like shit and is not respectful and so on and so forth. And when she finds this red dress at this weird department store with this really weird sales clerk who looks like she's straight out of The Witches, I really wanted her to figure things out in her life, and I wanted things to end for the better with her. I wanted her to figure out what's going on with this red dress, why all these crazy things were happening associated with it, put a stop to it, and regain control of her life, and stop whatever this department store of witches had in mind from ever happening. So that's what I thought the film was building up to. That's what I thought that the film was. And then 50 minutes in, it just decides to literally, spoiler, throw Sheila out the front of her own car and onto the asphalt and kill her. And then we follow the story of Reg and his girlfriend, Babs, and we're supposed to care, and it's supposed to be it's supposed to feel natural, or just because the dress went from one victim to the next. So yeah, the second half is definitely not as strong because Reg and Babs, although the actors, they do a fine job. I don't think Hayley Squires or Leo Bill, who played both of those characters, were an issue. I thought their performances were fine with what they were asked to do. I thought the character of Reg was interesting because apparently he was a cross-dresser. I think they should have pushed the boundaries a little bit more with that. Like, this dress has magical abilities or whatever. It's made by a coven of witches. Like, instead of, like, branding him with a beauty mark, well, not really a beauty mark. What it is it's more like a rash that's, like, the name of the department store. But instead of doing that like they do with everyone else, like, maybe, like, have some gender bending thrown in there. Like, instead of having him, spoiler, just die sitting in front of the TV while he's watching one of the weird ads for the department store. It just felt like they were going there, but they didn't really cross the line or really go weirder. And with this movie that has a scene that is one of the weirdest scenes I've ever seen involving a mannequin, and if you've seen this movie, you will know you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you will once you see this movie if you decide to actually watch this film. One of the weirdest, trippiest, most bizarre fucking scenes I've ever seen involving a mannequin, and it doesn't go as far as it could with the man in a dress. It's just one of those things that's like, I get it, maybe it's a taboo, maybe you didn't want to go there, but this is a movie that's breaking boundaries all over the place and is weird as hell. Like, it could have benefited, especially in that second half, on going there and being even weirder. Just felt like it kind of cheaped out or kind of just stepped around it a little bit. Because Because there were moments where it kind of felt like it was going to go in that direction, but then it doesn't do anything with that. But, you know, despite that, there is still some standout bits of weirdness. I mean, Reg, he does this thing where he speaks in a very monotone voice, and he's detailing how you fix a washing machine, which is his job. He fixes appliances and stuff like that. And every time he speaks, and he talks about all these different ways to fix something, it causes people to go into trances. And then he's talking about a dream sequence he had. It was more of a nightmare, and they show a reenactment of it. And Babs gives birth to a baby, and the baby has the red dress on, and then the baby turns around and flips Reg off. It's like one of those things you're like, oh my god, like that's fucking insane. But that's the kind of stuff I like. So even though the second half wasn't as strong as the first, there were still moments of weirdness and surreal, just craziness that it still was watchable. That's why I still like the film, and why I would like to eventually add it to my collection, is because despite the fact that the second half isn't as strong as the first, and it does have an infuriating detour, it's still not completely worthless. Although the ending does also feel a little bit rushed. That's why Strickland really could have used another writer. But I think he does a great job, though, with the bizarre, surreal aspects of the overall plot. The dialogue that he has is so refreshingly out there. I really enjoyed it. It's I can see why there are people out there that would see this and be like, what the fuck? I don't get it, and I understand. But a part of it is that a part of the film's appeal is this just one what the fuck moment after another, because it really did have plenty of moments that I did not see coming, that really surprised me or shocked me or did something that made me go whoa. So any film that can do that in this particular genre deserves a lot of props, if you ask me, despite the flaws. So the film also features a score by Cavern of Antimatter, and Cavern of Antimatter, they are a synthwave band, or series of composers. I love me some synthwave, and I really like this score. I would love to see more modern horror films with synthwave scores. Dance with the Dead would be a good band to hire to do stuff like that. There are plenty of other ones out there that would do really, really good jobs, that would do some fantastic work for a horror film, especially if you're trying to have like a weird, surreal aesthetic. I think the synthwave really would work. I already praised the cinematography by Ari Wegner, but just praise it again real quick. Deserves the praise. It's gorgeous. Does a wonderful job. The editing by Matthias Fekete. I don't know if I said his name correctly. I probably didn't. That's also quite excellent. It's a really well edited film in terms of how things flow. And despite the fact that the movie isn't as strong overall, because the first half is stronger than the second, and there are some pacing issues in the second half, the editing isn't really an issue. I don't think the editing is the problem. What's the problem is ultimately the screenplay by Peter Strickland. Here's the thing. I mean, I might have said it before, but I think it bears repeating if I haven't. If the plan was to have the dress float to one victim to another, then it should have been a anthology film. The anthologies would be the dress would be the wraparound, and it would be similar to Cat's Eye in the way that instead of the cat traveling to different stories, the dress would travel to different people, and then you would see the story that involves the dress. Instead of essentially psyching your audience out with a more satisfying culmination to a first half that they actually became invested in. So I really don't know what else to say about the film, except if you are looking for something unquestionably unique, uh, and you like what you saw in the trailer, at least from the aesthetics, I would recommend you check this out sometime. If the aesthetics don't really do anything for you, the overall plot doesn't really interest you, if it's one of those movies that sounds like it's too weird and too out there for you, I probably would not recommend it. But if that sounds like it's something that you're interested in or that's your cup of tea, I actually highly recommend you watch this at least once. I think you'll definitely get some enjoyment or some satisfaction out of the film. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give it 3.5 out of 5. I think it's an above average film. Initially, I was thinking about maybe giving it 4, but I can't really do that because the second half is nowhere near as strong as the first. Has some pacing issues. Majorly, the majority of them are in the second half. Although there's a bit of them in the first, and the ending is a bit of a mess. And the twist with them being in purgatory, making red dresses, I don't really know. I don't quite get it. But regardless, glad I saw the movie. I liked it, and it was definitely a trip. So anyway, thank you for watching, as well as thank you for your cooperation, and have a nice day.